Designed for running adventures on a variety of surfaces, the Catula Exospikes footwear traction are at home on ice and snow as well as on dry, rocky ground. 12 ultra-durable tungsten carbide spikes provide an impressive amount of grip when you need it and stand up to rocks and other abrasive trail features when you don't. Exospikes will inspire you to follow the trail less traveled, even when it's covered in ice. For more information, visit catula.com.
Welcome to our Tuesday Fireside Chats. Today we're going to be joined by Peter Mortimer, who has a lengthy history in running ultras and trails. He also has a history with me, and we're going to explore that conversation as well as his relationship with some products such as Vespa and Element and Spring Energy, and just kind of get into his background about how he got started in trail and ultra running, and just explore his whys for being a part of this. And if you have questions for him, please make sure to hit the little question mark at the bottom. Keep the conversation going. As per usual, this will be live on our Instagram feed here after the conversation is over, but then it will also be live on our website, YouTube channel come Thursday, and then on our podcast on Monday as well. And perfect timing, Om Gandhi, co-owner, joining us along with Peter Mortimer as well. Hey, Peter, thanks for joining us. We got a little technical difficulties here. This is what happens when you go live without any studios, right?
Yeah.
How are you?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So before we get started, we have to settle a debate here in the owner's room between Om and I, and you're going to be the deciding factor on how well this conversation goes. You ready?
Okay.
Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Oh, I mean, I like it. I mean, it's an abomination, sure, but man, it tastes good. You gotta look at it two different ways.
That's a 50-50 vote then. This will be okay then. It will be all good.
You gotta give me one, Jason. Come on.
So I don't know if you know this, Peter, but your history and my history go back to 2016.
Really? Like,
yeah.
Okay. I gotta hear it.
In 2016,
yeah,
you and I raced Coldwater Rumble out there in the Australia Mountains, and finished 11 minutes ahead of me. So did you feel the heat? Did you feel the pressure from me coming down, as you were coming down?
I think I've done that race twice. That was my first DNF the year before. I had a bad ankle injury, and I really had no business running ultras still. I had no idea what I was doing. But yeah, that was a little bit of vengeance for the next year. So that was after I did that, I was like, I never want to run those trails ever again.
Well, I'll tell you, so I had registered for Coldwater. At the time I lived in Dallas, and I just assumed, because I didn't know anything about ultra and trail running either, but I just assumed every 100-miler was a Western States qualifier, and that was the goal. So after I registered for it, a couple of months go by, I'm like, I should probably read about this race. And I'm like, oh, wait, it's not a Western States qualifier. And I registered for Rocky Raccoon 2 weeks later to get you figure I had the fitness and go and race Rocky Raccoon to get the Western States qualifier.
Yep.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, I mean, you're talking, 7 years ago, and like the idea of any of the make no sense back then, right?
Yeah, like I said, I had no business really doing it. I mean, I wasn't even taking salt like in a race. I was just like, I was having digestive issues. Nothing was processing, and it was like, someone was yelling at me and telling me, you need to take more salt, and all of a sudden, like, bodily functions started working, and I just yeah, it was early on. I was very stubborn in the beginning, but I kind of, that's how I like to approach things and learn things is, I want to feel the absolute worst of those moments. And so next time when I'm going through it, I'm like, okay, this is what I was doing wrong. This is how I need to fix it.
So let's see if you can remember a few years ago when you were at the top of Eldon, and
Yeah.
I came hiking up to the top of Eldon during Cocodona. You had finished, a day and a half ahead of me probably. And I get there, and you're like, "What do you need?" I'm like, "To get off this fucking mountain. Like, I just want to get
Yeah.
this over with."
I remember. I
You
I see a lot of scared faces at the top of Eldon. I've been up there last year as well, and yeah, it's even my coach Eric Sensman when he finished last year when he got up to the top of Eldon, I'd never seen so much fear in somebody's eyes, and with the wind and everything, and
oh,
it's and you're so weary and tired and just and yeah, there's people that are like a little I wouldn't say chipper. They got a chip on their shoulder just because they're so tired and they want to just get this thing done. And but you got to get some good food in the belly because those last like 8 miles, they're long 8 miles.
well, you literally said to me, "You're like, you're gonna sit down here because if you don't eat something right now, those last few miles are gonna take longer than you expect to happen."
Yeah,
And you ate a grilled vegan bratwurst,
yeah.
and as I was there, I saw somebody had chocolate cake, and I was like, "Well, what's that?" And they're like, uh, uh,
we like to have lots of offerings up there. So thanks to Aravipa for letting us crash a party and making it fun. But that's it's kind of a special moment, like when you get to that part of the race and you know that it's just almost all downhill. So
Yeah, that Jeep road is rough though. I have friends that are doing Cocodona for the first time this upcoming year in a couple of months, and I'm like, look, when you get to the top of Eldon, one, you got to eat because the last 8 miles is really long, and I've got advice from PJ on how to do that. So make sure you eat. But two, like when you go down that Jeep road, it's steep AF, and you just got to be careful on the way down to not be the time that you trip and fall and end up rolling all the way down that mountain.
Oh, absolutely. We use that it's Eldon Lookout Road, and a lot of us in town run up and down that as part of our vertical. It's probably one of the only things you can run on right now because the snow is so packed. But it's also you just lean forward and your body can just take you. It's like the perfect grade. But when you're been running for 4 or 5 days, when you get to that, it's just like all you want to do is try and slow yourself down, and your quads are just shot. And yeah, yeah,
It's
get that
amazing.
food in and just lean forward.
That's right. So we touched based on a couple of things from, obviously 2016 and Cocodona, the inaugural year, but, tell us how you got started, way back when, and give us some insight into why. Why did you get started?
Um, so yeah, I never liked running growing up. I did sports like football, soccer, tennis, and running was the worst part. I played midfield in soccer, and that's the most running that you do, and I was just like miserable. All I want to do is just kick the ball and do fancy footwork, which I wasn't that great at either. But and then yeah, I went through my 20s and I had kids early. I was in the military at the time and just kind of not active, got pretty fat, and my heaviest I was around like 250 pounds. That's just 6'3". I guess people just call me husky, but I wasn't happy. So I was like, I have to make a life change, and I just started kind of losing weight all the wrong ways. You starve yourself, and then you're like, oh, I'm just gonna start running, and then I ran for a little bit, didn't enjoy it at all, and then um, about I think it was 2010. I was in a real bad moment in my life, getting divorced and dealing with young kids and everything, and I decided I just like need to make a change. So I joined this running club that called the Hash House Harriers. They're a drinking club with a running problem. So you meet up have a drink, and then you go on these fun runs together. And that really changed my view of running. It was running just stopped becoming a chore. And because you didn't know where you were running and how far you were running, I just started realizing I could go further and further. And then finally I was like, I think I'm going to try a half marathon. And then I did a half marathon. Then I was like, I'm going to do a full. And I trained for a year and I did a full. And then it was like, wow, I was pretty close to Boston time. So let's try that. And then I started to hate it again because it was just becoming more and more like obsessive. And again, running on streets, large crowds, not my thing. And I almost quit running. And my partner, Siska, who was running with me during that time, she was like, you should try trail racing. And so, yeah, my first trail race ended pretty disastrous, by DNF. It was actually, I got called into work, had to go all the way across town right before the race. I was bummed. So I was like eating this cheeseburger and mozzarella sticks, all this horrible food, just like, self-pity party. And then all of a sudden my surgery case canceled. So then I drove all the way back across town. I made it to the start line, like 30 seconds to go. And literally just, that was it. Went, fell into a cactus twice, super bad indigestion, just like absolutely had a blast though. I love the community. I was like, this is really fun. And that was it. It was just, that was that Air Viper race. And now I'm running with them. So
It's amazing, right? How like these little things that add up in your career, in your history, you can reflect on and be like, yeah, I remember those moments. I mean, you're laughing now at falling into two cacti and DNFing, right? But I bet you on the day it happened, it really wasn't all that funny.
It was very, very humbling because going from running marathons to like, I can't even finish this 25K. It was, but you know what? It was, I had a blast and I had a lot to learn from there. It was like, I was semi-fast on the roads and then I got onto the trails and I'm like, oh my God, like, where'd this hill come from? And yeah, I've just been one of those personalities. Like once I kind of fall in love with something, then I'll just, I do obsess a little bit and try and become better. Just for me, it's just trying to better myself every year, trying get faster, get stronger. But I also know I'm working against age. And I keep challenging myself every year, harder and harder races. People will throw all these challenges at me all the time. Run this, go through this, and I'll get to it.
So speaking of hard races, and you were talking about like the learning mindset. How did that eventually lead to you going and doing races like the Bigfoot, the Cocodona, and the Dragon, the Spine race?
Yeah. So I guess when I did my first, from trail racing, I went into ultras pretty fast. I wanted to do a 50-mile race. I signed up for the Man Against Horse race, which I've done many times now in Arizona, and it's one of the oldest races out here. And you get to race horses, which is pretty awesome.
Wow.
So I thought that was something unique, something fun for my first. And I was hiking the Grand Canyon, doing rim to rim to rim with one of my surgeon friends at the time, and I'd been to the Grand Canyon and looked over the edge, never even taken a step down. And I was like, I'm gonna go do this all the way across over 2 days, back and forth. And but I knew I was gonna train for this 50-mile. I've done marathons, and man, I got to the other side of that rim that first day, and I was like, I don't know if I can make it back. It was very humbling. And I remember we were all huddled in this little cabin sharing a bag of like Lay's potato chips, just like stuffing the salt like in our faces. We just demolished that family size bag and then went down the next day, and it was very surprising for me just to see like, wow, I'm able to still move. Like the first couple of miles were stiff, and then you kind of get faster, and then And that's when I started realizing about ultra running, that like there's so many moments during a race. That's how you feel. It's just, you feel great, you feel like shit, and then you feel suddenly you feel good again. And then you slow down. It just kind of goes up and down. What we try to do is kind of meet somewhere in the middle, right? And yeah, I just kept. I wanted to do this 50 miler, and so I did that, and then a month later I did my first 100 miler, and again, no idea. I was like, oh, it's just 250 miles, like didn't know anything about nutrition and everything, and great buy on that one. And yeah, so I did a couple of them, but I wanted to do the mountain stuff, and but I knew, I was like, I got to be able to finish these races first before I even, you know, attempt those. And then my first mountain race was Massanutten in Virginia, and that's one of those beast coast races. I mean, it was a tough race, and I had many dark moments during that race, and I ended up having to walk it in. But I got it done, and I was just like, this is it. I want to do this all the time. And then I just kept signing up for harder and harder ones. I'm like, I finished this, now I'm going to do this. And eventually led to doing my first 200 in Tahoe. And I think I did that 2016. And it was so daunting because hundreds were so tough, and the thought of like just starting again. But man, what a ride I had. It was like, got it done, and had like the best crew. We had like eight or nine people there, and all sporting, and had all these wild moments. It was just like the best thing, like one of the best moments, memories. And then after I finished that, I knew that I wanted to do a really tough one, and so I picked Bigfoot. And I trained for that race for a solid year, and did quite well. And that was my first race, also major race on OFM. Taking Vespa and doing the fat adapted. And wow, I knocked. It was a harder race, and I knocked a solid day off my previous year.
Wow.
So I was pretty proud of that one. And then after that, it was just like, well, what's next? And I just keep working my way up. I've got the spine race this year. And as much as I really want to do the winter one, I can go back and see family and actually enjoy myself in the summer. So I'm doing the summer spine. And I wasn't a runner when I lived back in the UK, so I just, for me, it's just kind of, I'm going to get to see like the country in a whole different perspective.
That's awesome. One of the things you touched on a couple of times is your DNF and your humbling. You've been humbled at events. So one of the mantras we have at Run Try Bike is failure is not terminal. It's a building block to success. If you're being humbled and you've had DNFs and you keep coming at it and coming back to it, what's your approach to the word failure, and what does that mean to you?
Wow. If you ask Siska, my partner, she'll say that I'm way too hard on myself, because I've won races and I just criticize. That's the first thing I do. To me, it's always a battle myself. As much as I like racing and competing, at the end of the day, it's always against myself, right? And failure is man. There's Uray, for example. I'm going back this year. That is my white whale, as I call it, for races, and that race, I know I can finish it. My first year was, I ended up pulling the plug because of an injury, and I had UTMB, which was like in 2 weeks or something like that, and I was like, I'm no way risking UTMB. I spent years to do that, so I pulled myself. And then the last time I did it, I ended up racing it and chasing Anthony up the hill, and I got to like mile 86, and I was wrecked. Absolutely, that's for those who don't know, the Uray 100's got about 42,000 feet of climbing.
Honestly, it's hard for like hard's sake.
Yeah.
And I was crew, pacer at the event. So I only covered about 25 miles, covering the whole 100. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Both years I've had a pacer going over Crystal Lake, and both years they were like, never, never again. They're just, it breaks. I mean, breaks pacers' souls, and it just the terrain is unrelenting as well as the weather, and I love it. I really do. I just, this year I'm going to go back and just run smart. I've gotten better at that.
I can understand
Um,
though, because the section I paced was to go up and over, up to Twin Peaks and back,
yeah,
and in that one section where you're in that really narrow ledge going up and it's raining, in the afternoon, and
yeah,
that just becomes one big slick slide,
yeah,
and you climb it and you get to the top, you can't beat the view. It's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. Yeah. I DNF'd at Silver Shield like mile 86, and you think, oh, it's only like 15, 16 miles left, but like 12,000 feet of climbing. And so I was just like, I mean, my body completely shut down on me that day. But it was warranted. I was running recklessly. I was excited. I was way stronger than the last time, I think, and Anthony ran a great race. I got him back to hurt. I love that kid. Yeah, no, but yeah, I'm gonna go back and just run a smart one this year. I love the San Juans. Just absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous mountains.
you you mentioned nutrition as well, and if anybody goes to your bio on Instagram, they'll see essentially three, right, nutrition partners for you:
Yeah.
Vespa, Spring Energy, and Element. How do all of those things work together for you, and when did you realize how you can incorporate each one of those into your nutrition plan for racing these distances?
All right. So, Element, I'll do that one first because they don't do sponsors. I wish they would. But they've been very kind to me, so I always tag them on there. And their product is top notch, especially if you're like low carb. Um, the biggest thing, for me is taking a low carb. You try to eat as clean as you can most of the time. You're not getting in enough salt in your everyday diet. Whereas most diets, people are eating just, they're eating garbage. That's when they're saying, you shouldn't have salt in your diet because there's so much in your processed food. And as a runner too, just burn off tons of salt all the time. So, I have to take in quite a bit. So I just take in one of those packets and I just mix it throughout the day. And then that's what my go-to electrolyte. It's got like 1,000 milligrams of salt in one of those little packets. So, but yeah, during races, it's been really good because I try and stay away from the sugars as much as possible. So, it's got a little sweetener in there, different flavors. But and then yeah, that and then Spring Energy is kind of my go-to fuel. It's just real food and low sugar spike. Again, I don't go no carb. I just got like low carb. So and the different flavor, love the different flavors. They've been very good to me. So um, if if you have stomach problems, they're a little bit easier in my opinion, other than the high sugar stuff.
Which one's
So,
your favorite flavor?
oh man, so everyone loves the apple one, not me. I'm a big sage fan, so yeah, the canterbury is really good. I also like speed nut, so Hill Aid also very good. But yeah, I'm not a cinnamon guy. They have a new chocolate cherry one, which is pretty good. No. Um, but yeah, I take Spring Energy and then Vespa, and that's Peter Defty's been really good to me as well. Got me on the Vespa OFM wagon back in 2017, and totally changed the way that I run. So if you ever have questions about OFM, you can always message me. Always happy to share that info with people. But basically, just kind of cutting down on the sugar, running on your own body fat, and really pushing the boundaries of what you can do on your own body fat. We're still, I'm working with Peter and Jeff Browning, Nick Curry, and those guys, and we're still doing testing to kind of see what these different athletes and how they burn their fat and like what they're capable of. And the last one I did certainly just blew my mind as far as like where I thought my threshold was compared to where it like actually is. So since then, I've been pushing myself even harder in the races and still like finishing, feeling great, quick recovery. So I'm gonna keep with it.
That's awesome. Excuse me. So you're working with all of these companies and in various forms or fashions, right? So do you feel the pressure to have to perform because of these companies that you're sponsoring and repping when you're out there on the training and racing?
I mean, sure. Yeah. I mean, it's part of the deal, it's not a gravy train, it's one of those things that like when I first started doing it, I just reached out to companies, whether it's ambassadorship programs is whatever, and you're trying to work your way through the ranks. I a lot of companies want ambassadors, and that's great. And like, if you like their product, that's great. You can get yourself a discount code and start there. And for me, I've always, again, with trying to better myself and opportunities have opened up, and I'm really thankful for it. And I have a full-time job, and I'm coaching on the side. So I'm always happy to a little discount code, like whatever it is. And if it's products that I use, then yeah, it's great. And like even now, more so just because I like paying it forward with my athletes. And the average runner is like, Jeff told me this once, and this is like, your average consumer is like, in the back of the packer, they're the ones that are like spending all this money and stuff. And, if the guys up top are getting stuff handed down to them, then, it's like, any sort of discount that you can get for these guys, it's important.
That's awesome. That's a great mentality to have. And so we appreciate that, because we built our business on focusing our stories on the middle to the back of the packers, right?
Yeah.
Not to say that folks like yourself who are winning races don't have great stories too, but there's a lot of middle back of the packers out there that we want to help them tell their stories to keep inspiring people who, to your point, may want to go through the ambassador program and then work themselves up the way you did and follow in your footsteps, essentially, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's, at the end of the day, it's just try and better yourself no matter what you do. Like if it's your work or, you're running, your job, just whatever, just that's kind of my mantra. And, it's like setting a New Year's resolution, but, it's something that you're always thinking about. New Year's resolutions, like, I'm going to do this. And then you just kind of do it for a month and then, yeah, whatever. And, but this is something like it's, especially when it comes to your health. I mean, take care of your body and stuff. And, you got one life. I get it. Just, it's okay to live life. But, also, I can't imagine if I just followed on the same trajectory when I was in my 20s, just health-wise, like where I'd be. So, and, my friends, my close friends, especially, they send me all my fat pictures that I thought got burned on the internet, but it just, to see like where I was kind of back then and, like where I am now.
Yeah, it's sort of like a planted flag that you can always look back on and continue to progress forward, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned,
go
ahead.
I was going to say that, I mean, I totally resonate with that, as somebody who used to be 250 pounds and, started running for mental health reasons and, things sort of changed after that. But, I kind of wanted to, better understand and ask about that. When you first started losing weight, like when you first started running, and it might have been more for like losing weight, when did you get to the point where there was kind of a shift in your mindset where running became this thing that was more of like, this is something I really like to do? Because I know you mentioned you didn't like it at first.
Yeah. I think I really started to like running when I joined the Hash House Herders. I mean, they made it fun, you know. It's you meet up a bunch of total strangers and they're immediately welcoming, you know, and you have no idea where you're going. You're following someone that's laid a trail, and you know, there's different check marks and they send you the wrong direction, try and trick you, and then eventually you get to the beer and then you have a beer and enjoy yourself, and then you carry on, and then you eventually get back to where you started. And I was like, this is really fun. And when I started doing these things, they would say, oh, 3, 4 miles, and then, your friend shows up and he does 6 mile trail, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I just did a 10K. And then, but it changes your whole perspective. And, I've been guilty of leading people on some extra miles over the years, but everyone's, I look at people and I'm like, I know what people are capable of, and they're always more capable of what they think they are,
Not to put you on the spot, but I'm going to put you on the spot. So you figured out when running became fun. When did you realize that you're good at this? When did you realize that, man, I can compete with the best in the world. I can actually win races and beat the best in the world?
I think when I did the Bigfoot 200, I got second at that one. That's a tough course, real tough, and one of my favorites, just because of like how rugged it was. And again, we had a big crew, and it was an adventure for everybody. I had a bunch of childhood friends there, and that I went to school with in Italy, and we were all in Washington at the time, and they're out there sporting. So it was really bittersweet for me. And when I was doing it, it started this OFM thing, and I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe like how well I was moving and how consistent I was moving. And that's when I was like, and then you finish second and you're like, I can do this.
It's awesome.
But and it's, I tell my athlete, or I tell my athletes all the time, manage expectations. That's what you always have to use. Like we always have this drive. I want to win. I want to do this. And anytime I go to these races now, I went to Tarawera a few weeks back, and I was like, wow, I'll be lucky if I crack top 20 on that. And because there's just so many good runners, and so many good runners you didn't even heard of. Just world staged race, and I ended up finishing top 10, and I was freaking proud of that one. And because again, it's just like I'd be lucky to even crack top 10 at regular races years ago, and now I'm doing them on the world stage. That I'm it means I'm kind of going in the right trajectory, and that's why I like to be challenged. And at the end of the day, I try and do as well as I can in these races, but it doesn't really matter like where I finish, as long as I'm having a good time doing it.
So we asked Reed Burrows this question just before his event at Black Canyon. When you're lined up at the start line and you've got, world-class people around you, you have a strategy for racing. And let's say the group goes off and they're going at a pace that's either faster than your strategy calls for or slower than your strategy calls for. How do you manage those expectations in the heat of battle in that way?
Normally, music is how I control myself. I'm big in listening to music. I've got all sorts of playlists, and I try and save the heavy metal for later in the race when I'm just like warmed up and I'm ready to go. But yeah, try and keep it. Generally, I like playing like Epic's movie soundtracks early on, stuff that's just kind of like in the moment. And but yeah, it's hard sometimes to not to get wrapped up. I mean, at Tarawera this year, I did go out pretty hot, and it was straight uphill. But I also didn't want. I had an experience in Hong Kong several years ago where your first mile is just down this road, and then you just funnel into single track, and everyone is just elbowing you, and just it's very aggressive, like straight up this hill. And I was like, I don't want that. So I'm like, got 2 mile climb, whatever it was, and I was like, I know I can climb, so I'm gonna push myself out front, and then once I get far enough out there, I'll just settle back, and that's what I did. So that's I try and read the room too with who's running, because it's like when I'm on the sidelines crewing and pacing, I love, like, a Black Canyon. I love watching the carnage. Oh, so good. So there's so much ego, so much, like, just raw talent, just all on the line, and I'm just watching everyone blow up. It's just, but anyone can have a good day.
Man, that race is tricky because, you descend into Black Canyon City. And when I got into Black Canyon City a number of years ago, I was like, okay, cool. We're at the 60K mark, 40K to go. And then you got to climb out of Black Canyon City. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like, why are we here now? Like,
Yeah.
I can't take more.
Yep. That's where everyone falters. So I had an athlete doing his first 100K this year, and we talked about it ahead of time, and because he did the 60K the year before, which basically ends at Black Canyon City.
Yeah.
And he finished it, and we looking at splits and everything, and I'm like, okay, you're gonna go a minute slower on every mile for these first, like for the first 60K essentially. And he was just like, oh my God, like that, but like that seems so slow. And I'm like, so you're gonna lose an hour. You're gonna lose an hour. And he ended up getting to that part an hour and a half faster than he did the year before. So I mean, and he did tremendously right after that, because I paced him out of there, and we just cruised by everybody going uphill and stuff, and had a great time. And just because he saved his legs a little bit, it's that race it's a hot one.
Yeah, it's sneaky hard because you don't realize it. You're running on the road to begin with, so you're like, oh, this is easy, I can do this. And you're descending in and then climbing out. It's deceptively hard.
Yeah.
For those of you who never raced it, take my word for it. One-time finisher, one-time DNFer as well. Yeah. So I've got a history.
It's got a lot of undulations. It's like a net downhill, but you feel like you're going up most of the time.
Right. You mentioned Australia, you mentioned Hong Kong, Great Britain, the US. Obviously, you've raced all over the world. Where's been your most favorite place to race?
So far, I mean, UTMB is pretty epic, That's probably one I would love to repeat. Sorry, go ahead.
Because of the course, or because of the environment, or the combination thereof?
I mean, it's the granddaddy of the races out there. I mean, like, it just you're on the world stage, thousands of people. It's a festival, in Chamonix and Courmayeur, and, like, just getting to run through 3 countries, with that much vert and just insane conditions. It's just such a raw race. I love it. We had a great trip out there in 2018, and made a little holiday out of it. We spent 2 weeks over there, and I got to show my son and my partner Siska where I grew up in Italy, and so that, to me, that was a real special one. But Wales was also, running across the country of Wales is also pretty awesome.
You see how happy he is to talk about UTMB? That means you have to do your job at Canyons to get me across the finish line so I can get my points to enter the lottery.
Oh yeah, we're getting you.
I'll be at Canyons this year. What distance are you doing?
The 100-miler.
Oh, me too. I'll see you there.
But something tells me I won't finish 11 minutes behind you this time.
It's only uphill if you keep your head down. You gotta tilt your head back, and it all becomes flat. It's just it'll change your life.
I'll keep that in mind. Hey, we're getting close to the time limit here, but I don't want to get off this conversation without you talking about 8 More Miles in your coaching business, and why you started that and what it means to you.
Yeah, so thanks again for putting a little plug in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so I decided about a year ago that I wanted to be a coach. And well, a little over a year ago now. But I started small, kind of under the table, and then I ended up enjoying it and got my coaching certification. And I'm still kind of keeping it small right now, just because I have a full-time job, and I really want to focus these first few years on kind of like how I can be a better coach. I'm new at and just because I'm a decent runner doesn't mean I'll be a great coach. So it's a work in progress. But the 8 More Miles thing comes from we were doing every year I do this run across South Mountain in Phoenix, and it's on we call it the No Pants Giving hike. It's like right after Thanksgiving holiday. It's on the Saturday or Sunday, and it's about a 15.5 mile jaunt across South Mountain. Really beautiful. One year I was taking some people up, and I always do drop cars at the end, and the place where I normally park was shut off. And I was like, oh crap, where am I going to park? So I end up parking a couple miles down, and I'm like, this is going to break them. I mean, that's a long trip, and then they've got to go and come another couple of miles. I'm like, I'm not going to tell them. And so I get to the start, and I just lead him across, and we get about halfway, the normal halfway mark, and they're like, how far is it from here? I was like, it's 8 more miles. And they're like, okay. And then a couple miles goes by, and then like, how much further do you think? I'm like, it's 8 more miles. And they're just like, they started giving me this really serious, just like, oh God, I hate you look. And I was like, well, it's a funny story, and explain what happened. And so it just it became a running, quote unquote, running joke.
Yeah.
And I just kind of, I ran with it essentially. I just, again, these people were like already could barely get through 16 miles, and now they're going to do another 3-4 miles, but they did it. And that's kind of my mantra, right? It's just, just try something hard, do it.
Yeah, I can actually see South Mountain from my apartment from here. So
yeah.
Well.
Yep, it's a doozy.
It sure is.
Yeah.
Hey, Peter, thank you so much. Before we let you go, we always have like some rapid fire questions, we call them. So
Sure.
A little bit less serious than the, what's your why and DNF stories and things like that. And we usually start with the pineapple on pizza thing, which you already answered. So these may not work well though, since you're a low carb guy, even though, because we tend to focus on candy. So do you at least eat some candy still?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I like sweets. I just, I keep away from it as much as I can, but I love it.
So the first question we typically ask is candy corn a real candy, or is it just earwax with some sugar coating?
Yeah, it's an abomination. It should not even exist. So many better candies.
So many. Thank you. When it comes to licorice, are you a red licorice guy or a black licorice guy?
Black licorice.
Black.
Just we just grew up dipping it in sugar.
Really?
Yeah. It's a British staple right there. Black licorice, black licorice and sugar. Just
From now on. What about Easter's coming up? So what about Peeps? Is that a real candy, or is that something you should just throw in the garbage?
Oh no, it's not real. Have a Cadbury cream egg. It's much better.
Oh, you like the Cadbury cream egg?
Oh yeah, just about once. My favorite is if you put them in the fridge. So you bite into them and they all fall apart like crazy. But it's just it's so good.
Amazing. I like when the first time I saw the commercial for the Cadbury cream egg as a kid here in the States. I was like, oh no, that's not happening. Like it just.
Big Cadbury's Hershey's war going on. Actually, like part of the same company, I think.
I think
which
so.
is
I think it's
interesting.
just,
Yeah.
they've just merged with each other.
Yeah.
All right. So, do you eat barbecue?
Like on the grill or like
No, not grill. Like in
or
the
like
state,
barbecue.
right?
Oh, like chips.
Texas. Like, do we like we refer? We have Texas barbecue, we have Carolina barbecue, and we have St. Louis barbecue.
Oh,
So
just like
it's
the
all.
sauce. Okay.
Which is your favorite of the three?
Uh, um, I'm more of a dry rub guy, so I'm just gonna go Texas, sure.
No, so,
It's to me, it's like when anyone breaks out steak sauce on a steak, I'm just like, no, this is not happening.
so no A1 for you. That's out.
No.
It's an
Steak
abomination.
is just
Candy
by
corn.
itself. Yeah.
Are you a pie or a cake guy? And today just happens to be pie day, but let's ignore that for now.
I'm a pie guy.
Favorite pie?
Yep.
Pie?
Uh, rhubarb.
Rhubarb
Yep. That's
with added
delicious.
sugar?
With what? No, just rhubarb pie, dollop of ice cream on it, or custard, even better. Yeah.
Awesome. What's your go-to recovery meal after a hard race?
Um, I try and keep pretty low carb. So I'll, if I can, I'll eat like a steak or something. Um, I also eat that before a race, so I eat a lot of steak.
Outside of here on Instagram, Peter, where can our readers and our followers find you and follow your journey through all of these events?
Yeah, Peter Mortimer on Facebook, and then Strava, Peter Mortimer on there. And yeah, I'm pretty much, if you type me on the internet, I'm sure you can find me or my coaching website, and you can shoot me a message. I try to always respond to people's messages as much as possible through all social media and everything. So always happy to chat.
Yeah, so coaching business, 8 more miles. Just go Google it and you'll find it. I will see you in a month and a half at the Canyons. Look forward to catching up in real life. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Have a great night, Peter. Thank you.
All right. You too. See ya. Bye.